In the last year, my photography journey has taken a few interesting turns, and that is certainly due in part to exploring the world of vintage lenses. What's up, folks? Mark Moody here, and I have been wanting to make a video about this lens for quite a little while. This in my hands is the lens in question. It is the Super Takumar 24mm f3.5. It is definitely one of my favorite lenses. It's a lens that has, not really that interesting of a history, but I'd say the history with myself as a photographer using this has been pretty influential in some of the work that I do, like I mentioned in the intro. So today we're going to talk about this lens. This lens was actually released back in 1967 for the Pentax Spotmatic 35mm film cameras. It was an M42 mount lens, so instead of it being a click and twist lens, this was actually a screw mount lens, and it was actually released as an alternative, as a wider alternative to Pentax's 28mm f3.5 lens. So a little bit of history about how I acquired this lens. I was actually on one of my YouTube rabbit hole journeys in spring of 2023 looking for kind of building out a vintage lens set for filming videos, and I kept coming across videos about the Super Takumar lenses. Specifically, I was drawn to the 35mm, the 50mm, the 85, and then I was also really interested in anywhere between a 24 and 20mm Super Takumar lens. Oddly enough, I didn't settle on the 20mm lens. It seemed a little too wide for what I was hoping to use it for, so I instead settled on the 24mm Super Takumar. I bought this lens in addition to a 50mm f1.4 Super multi-coated Takumar, which I like. It's a good lens, but I mean, just like this lens, at the time I really didn't use it too much. In fact, between the two lenses, I used the 50mm more for some filming that I would do at weddings and some photography here and there. But when it came to me using the 24mm, I really wasn't impressed. I actually really didn't use this lens very much, and the times that I did, I just didn't like the results. So I kind of dismissed using this lens for a little bit, and then sometime there at the end of December, I just decided to kind of challenge myself to use a lens that I don't use quite often, and sure enough, that's how I rediscovered the 24mm Super Takumar. So a little bit about the physical characteristics of this lens. The build quality is really nice. It's really solid. This is an all-metal lens with glass elements, of course, but there's no plastic in this lens. I think maybe the only plastic part is probably the lens back, but that's not really a part of the lens, it just comes with it. It's a really well-built, well-crafted lens. Outside of the build quality, it has a focusing range between 0.25 meters all the way out to infinity. So you're not going to get super macro capabilities with this lens, but that's not a super downside in my opinion. And then finally, with the aperture range, you can start all the way wide open at f3.5 and stop all the way down to f16. And then, as I mentioned before, this is a M42 screw mount lens, so it's not something that you just click onto your camera and twist. It does require a little bit of twisting once you attach it to the lens, but a couple quick turns, you're attached, you're good to go. I like to use a metal photodiox M42 to EF adapter. It's really simple to put these things together. It just requires a couple components to attach it to the camera. So I just screw the photodiox adapter on like that. And then because I really prefer to use this on my Canon EOS R, I have my EF to RF adapter. Yeah, I just kind of clip that on, and then to put it onto the camera, it's just that simple. And then when it's on the camera, honestly, this lens feels at home. It feels really comfortable, just this setup here. So, once I attached it and once I really started to mess around with this more, I really became quite fond of this setup right here and of this combination. All in all, it's just been really enjoyable to use it like this. I feel like the Canon EOS R, out of like any other vintage lens that you could pair it with, I think the 24mm Takumar works perfectly. So then the other thing to keep in mind about using this lens, no matter the camera that you attach it to, it is a fully manual focus lens. It was made in 1967. I'm not too sure if they had autofocus lenses at that point. So the focusing is totally up to the user. So what's really cool about using it on a mirrorless camera like the EOS R is I have access to focus peaking, which helps me tell whether or not my subject or my scene is going to be in focus. But in my opinion, if you're shooting in in a colorful color profile, like standard, neutral, faithful, whatever else Canon has, I feel as though that the focus peaking can become a little distracting and the colors don't mix very well. So to fix that, I actually shoot all of my photos with the 24mm Takumar on the Canon EOS R in a monochrome color profile. Just go right into the camera, change my profile to monochrome, and I set my focus peaking level to the color blue and then the intensity to low, just so that I'm not overwhelmed when what is in focus is super duper in focus. I just kind of have a little touch of that focus peaking on there, and I've actually found that that is a lot more useful and a lot more user-friendly to my photography with this lens on this camera. And when it comes to Super Takumar lenses, they're pretty well sought after and well known for their, their size, their availability. They're relatively inexpensive, but it's also the character of the images that these lenses produce. And the Super Takumar 24mm is absolutely no exception to that. I love the image quality that I get from this lens. This was actually my lens of choice between the months of January all the way up until early to late March, and it was practically glued to my camera. One of the things I love the most about this lens in particular is just how sharp things are when you nail that focus, especially in the center of the image. Now at f3.5, it's going to be a little bit soft, but still in the center of the image, it's pretty darn sharp. And then, when you stop down from there, when you go to like f8, f11, now you're cooking. Anything past that at like f16, it's still fairly sharp, but the corners tend to fall apart a little bit, so I try to avoid that as best I can. I just really love how the fall off looks in some of these images when shooting at f3.5. And I know what you might be thinking. You might be sitting there saying, well, what's the point? It's f3.5. If it's not f2.8, why would I even want to mess with this? Quite honestly, I think you get really beautiful images on this lens when you shoot it wide open. And I kind of prefer the look and feel of some of these f3.5 images over some images that I take with some of my f2.8 lenses. That's just how I feel. Controversial, whatever. I know, attack me, but that's just how I feel. It's my opinion. I like them. Whatever. Moving on. I'd say that there's a huge improvement in image quality when you go between f5.6 to f11, but I think f8 is definitely going to be your sweet spot. Then the other cool thing too is that there's a little bit of glow and halation in the highlights of some images that I've taken with this lens, and that's mostly if you're shooting in the direction of the sun. Maybe not shooting directly up into the sun, but like relatively where the light is, where it's coming from the sun. Like some of those backlit photos, I think they look kind of cool. I think no matter the aperture that you're shooting this lens at, there's a certain dreamlike soft quality to it, which I tend to find myself drawn to when it comes to this lens. And some people may like it, some people don't. I kind of prefer it. And then the other cool thing is that in the process of shooting these photos and shooting them on monochrome, I almost don't even want to change the color of them just because the look and the feel of the images has its own charm. Sometimes I'll change them to color and I'll edit the colors from there, but really it's these monochrome photos taken on this vintage lens that just, they hit different, they feel different. It almost made me feel as though I was shooting on film without shooting with film, if that makes sense. I felt a little more purposeful in my shots, and I was also able to focus more on composition and contrast and not worry so much about the colors of the scene that I was working on. In a way, I do feel as though this process made me a little bit of a better photographer. Right now, I have the Super Takumar 24 adapted to my Canon EOS R to kind of show you what the video looks like. And honestly, I don't have much experience using this lens for video. Right now, I'm shooting 24 frames per second at 1080p. The EOS R doesn't have the capability to do full frame 4K video, and I don't want to use a lens like this in a cropped field of view. I feel like it deserves a full frame field of view. That's what it was originally designed for when it was designed for 35mm film cameras. I think for the time being, I'm just going to continue to use it for photography. I think that's where it really shines best, but who knows, maybe I'll use this in some videos in the future. Ultimately, I'd say it's the entire experience of using this lens that I really enjoy. From the moment I compose the photo to the moment I take the photo and then seeing the final image, I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I think that using vintage lenses is an acquired taste. I don't think that it is for everyone. I think that no matter how popular the internet says these things are, it's not just something you can, purchase, take out of the box, slap on a camera, and immediately assume that you're going to get a good photo. I think that these lenses and one specifically like the 24mm Takumar definitely takes some getting used to. If this is something that you're interested in and you kind of are curious about exploring vintage lenses and using them, maybe implementing them into your workflow, then I highly recommend you check out the Super Takumar lenses. For me, this was a lens that I was very curious about. I dismissed it a little too early, but then gave it another shot. It was an underdog that rose to the top, and it is now one of my favorite lenses to use for photography. So now that I am done channeling my inner Kyle McDougall, I really appreciate you watching this video. This was a fun one for me to make, a little different than me just sitting down talking about the film photos that I took, 2 months ago, hoping to get caught up on stuff. But rather me just talking about a piece of camera equipment that was made back probably in the golden age of film photography, and now I'm using it for digital photography. Just kind of cool. I don't know, I liked it, something different. But let me know your thoughts down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Have you used the 24mm Super Takumar? Do you use Takumar lenses? What do you think? What do you like? What do you not like? I don't know, just comment down below. But in the meantime, I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you in the next one.